Hey everybody, Garry Adelman, American Battlefield Trust. I'm so glad you're with us today, and I can't believe I've never been here before. I'll tell you in a second, but we are on our swing through Petersburg, Virginia, and throughout North Carolina. Somehow yesterday we managed to make it from the Battle of Alamance over to Guilford Courthouse near Greensboro and up to Petersburg, a 3-hour drive, in about 10 minutes to post another video. And somehow now we're back in North Carolina. If you believe that's what we're doing, I have some land to sell you in a faraway place at an inflated price. But we are here today at the CSS Neuse Civil War Interpretive Center, and we're about to meet the site director. And let's just do it right now. Here is Matt Young. He's the site director here at the CSS Neuse Civil War Interpretive Center. What's the Neuse, and why are we here?
Hi, Gary.
Thanks, man.
I'm glad you guys could be here today. So, the CSS Neuse is the only remaining commissioned Confederate ironclad above water. In order to view the rest of the Confederate Navy, you're going to have scuba gear and a scuba license, and also be willing to dig in mud. So what we have in front of us here is a model of how the ship appeared when she was completed. You're looking at the model in the front. That's the bow. The center area there is the casemate, and we've cut away the casemate so you can see the two cannons that would have been inside. Two 6.4-inch Brooke rifled guns, double banded. On top of the casemate would have been 2 layers of 2-inch iron armored plate. So it would have been armored and protected from incoming enemy fire. As you get towards the stern, that's when you get the officers' cabins, and you also get shell and powder storage. The ship began her life in October of 1862, about 15 miles from here in Kinston, at a place called what is now Seven Springs. At the time it was called Whitehall. It came under attack in December of 1862 by Foster's raid out of New Bern, and it delayed its construction for about 6 weeks. But in early 1863, they got back to building this ship. They put it into the river in the spring of 1863, and then they took it downriver, kind of an unfinished shell. They brought it here to Kinston, they built a cofferdam, and that's when they outfitted her for war. They brought in the armor plating to put on the outside, they brought in the guns, they brought in the engines, they brought in the coal, and like almost all Confederate ironclads, she was vastly underpowered, even though she had 2 engines.
And let me ask, and by the way, welcome. I see all sorts of people, the Civil War Roundtable of Southwest Michigan, good to see you. We already have more than 100 people watching at once. I see a beautiful wooden deck. Is that typical for Confederate ironclads?
It is for this class, and there was 2 things. One, scarcity of iron plating. They could barely get what they had to cover the vertical surfaces of the ship. And secondly, they weren't really worried about plunging fire. They were much more worried about direct fire coming from enemy cannons, not so much like an enemy mortar. So they also didn't, you can see the bottom of the ship is flat. It's a flat bottom keel. So they didn't want so much weight on the top, it was going to press it down even more. As it is, the CSS Neuse had a draft of about 8 feet. That's a lot when you're talking about a smaller North Carolina river.
Okay, good. And I know what people want to see here. They want to see what you actually have to show them. But before we leave the model, anything else they need to know, Matt?
The very front of the ship, it was called an ironclad ram for a reason. It had a wooden ram with iron on the top, and as the Virginia proved, if it didn't shoot you with its guns, it could ram into you and put a hole in the side of your ship. So that was a lesson they had learned from ancient Greece.
Good. Okay, so here we are. I know y'all know what you're looking at here. This is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it actually before, about 10 minutes ago when we arrived here. So, Matt, how did they find it? Who found it? Where'd they find it?
Sure. So in 1865, the ship was given a mission during the Battle of Wise Fork to go and just harass the enemy, bring the ship back to Kinston, and scuttle it to prevent it from being captured. And that's exactly what the crew did. So what we have left is about 105 tons worth of long leaf pine. She was recovered in the early 1960s out of the Neuse River. Unfortunately, as Ed Bars used to say, if you want to see how not to recover an ironclad, go see the Neuse.
And let's, by the way, tell us how he did on his Ed Bars accent.
Probably not very good.
Let us know, out of a scale from 1 to 10.
He was a great guy. Loved interacting with Ed. He's definitely going to be missed. So this was an example of how not to recover an ironclad, because they destroyed half the ship getting it up out of the river in the 1960s, because the people who were doing it saw it as an economic opportunity more than a historical salvage operation. When they pulled it up, they chainsawed it in 3 pieces. It sat outside for a number of years. They built a shelter over it. It was moved once to a different shelter. They almost lost it during a hurricane. But finally in 2012, this facility was built. They moved it about 3 road miles. They backed it in here. We built the wall, and now it's in a climate-controlled, humidity-controlled facility, and it's not deteriorating anymore. All 105 tons of her.
All right, this is super cool. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. We are at the CSS Neuse Civil War Interpretive Center, and we're here with Matt Young, the site director, and we're going to do something special people don't get to do normally. So go ahead.
Gary, I'm going to invite you to do this with me.
All right, cool.
All right,
come on.
Come on underneath.
Yes. Don't do this at home. Well, you can't do it at home, but
Now, this is an original Confederate ironclad. How's that?
Unbelievable. Yeah.
You can see the spikes and the nails that were still driven in the 1860s.
And it's just, you can almost picture the people working on the ship as you stand here.
I don't let just anybody do that.
Thanks, Matt. And this is something about, the real thing. Battlefields themselves, the accounts that we have, and the stuff. This is why we like to go to museums and interpretive centers, because the stuff of history is an important part of the story.
The tangible things you can see and hear. Yeah.
There's nothing around it. So
absolutely.
So from what I understand, when you also found the ship, you found thousands of artifacts. Is that right, Matt?
Almost 10,000 artifacts were recovered off the ship. Over here, we kind of have a sampling of some of the items that were used to actually build the ship. An axe head, an auger. We have spikes and nails, trunnels or tree nails. And then as you get over here, one of the coolest things that I think that we have is the swage block right here. And I don't know if you want to ask your folks if anybody knows what a swage block is for.
Okay, you all heard it. So first of all, the first rating I've seen so far of Matt's Ed Barr's impression was a 7 out of 10.
Hey, I'll take a 7. That's
Pretty good. I've seen people from Frankfurt, Kentucky. We've got Californians. We've got someone from Wales, United Kingdom. So we are all over the place right now, and I think it's great. As we're here with the American Battlefield Trust, do you know what a swage block is? Let's keep moving.
Okay, so here's the swage block, and if you hadn't guessed, the swage block, these holes, are for where you actually do the molds for the nails and the spikes that go in the ship.
Super cool. Okay, so we're not going to be able to check out some of the 10,000 all the 10,000 artifacts, but some. What do you like to show us?
I like to show you this.
Yeah.
If you go straight, this is the keel of the ship. If you go straight down the keel, it makes for an awesome shot. Something else that was really important during Civil War Navy times was the ship's bell, because the ship's bell not only told you the time, it told you the watches, when it was time for you to go to work.
Super cool. And by the way, update, he's gotten 2 more 7s and 2 10s on his Ed Barr's impression. I think Ed would be proud, and thank you, Matt.
I hope so.
Let's check it out.
So one of the coolest things that we have as far as original items that were recovered off the ship is the original ship's bell. So that's the bell that would have been rang to let you know what time your watch was, to let you know what time it was on board ship. And then of course, it wouldn't be an ironclad without iron plating. This is an original piece of iron off of the ship.
And this is one of the reasons you have to come here. I mean, I'm glad we can bring this to you, on camera, but there's something, you hear about what 2 inches of iron plating is. Actually touching it is a totally different ballgame. And you could imagine the noise. The noise of everything bouncing off of this during the battle. Please come here. And how can people find out more about the museum, Matt?
We are located in Kinston, North Carolina, which is kind of in the center of eastern North Carolina. The best thing to do is go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/CSS Neuse. That's Neuse. CSS Neuse.
You sound like you've said that before.
Once or twice.
Okay, good. Anything here? Where are we going next?
I'm gonna show you an original piece of the casemate. Now the casemate is that upper section of ship the cannons were behind. So this is what had been on the raised portion of the ship. And you can see the wood kind of is interlocking here, almost like a weave, like a basket. And that's in order to gain more strength when you have shells that are incoming from enemy ships.
All right, and somebody said you got a Spinal Tap impersonation of 11, and somebody's
wow.
asking, Matt, whether or not you have anything belonging to the crew. If so, we can keep that. If there's any artifacts out belonging to the crew, let us know.
I'll tell you in just a few minutes, because we actually do have a few things that were crew related.
Okay, good. I see there's also another piece of iron plating here.
Yes, this is actually off the knuckle of the ironclad. This one piece of plate, it's only 2 inches thick. It weighs over 700 pounds.
Wow. Yeah, and there you go. Chris is getting a good view. That's Chris White behind the camera, and he has all his tech toys ready. You might have seen him turning on his light. We don't get to use this stuff that often, so thanks again for having us, Matt.
Sure.
Maybe one more view. I mean, I just can't get enough of
Now, you'll notice
this.
You'll notice there's not as much here on the port side as there was on the starboard. Do you know why, Gary?
The crane that picked it up?
No, this is where the gunpowder was placed when they scuttled the ship. This is where the explosion happened when the ship was scuttled in March of 1865 under the orders of General Braxton Bragg.
Braxton Bragg, everybody's favorite.
Not really. I agree.
Okay. I like that you have some interpretive exhibits for kids or some interactive.
Yes, a knot tying exhibit. We have a ship's wheel that you can steer. But one of the coolest things that I think we did is we built a mock-up of the ship from the river line up. So what you see right here is a mock-up of the ship from the river line up. You'll see it's wooden on the deck, iron plate on the angled surfaces going up, and one of the Brooke rifles projecting through the front of the gun port.
Super cool. We've got somebody at Stonewall Jackson's, boyhood home or birthplace. We've got someone from Valpo. Yes, I know what that is, so I can pronounce it properly. And it's good to have you all here. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. We are at the CSS Neuse Civil War Interpretive Center, and man, we're looking at an original Confederate ironclad, and we're looking at a replica over here. So hold tight. We'll show you more of the ironclad as well.
One of the greatest things you pick up in a museum setting is the ability to walk backwards and talk at the same time. What you see here is another piece of original iron plate, but it's in situ. So what you have is 2 layers of vertical iron, 2 layers of horizontal iron, 4 inches of oak, then another layer of pine and another layer of pine to give you 26 inches of protection between the exterior of the casemate and the interior of the casemate where the sailors would be housed at.
And this is just really cool what you've done here, because it's one thing to have the remnant of the ship, but people inherently want to see what was it like? How can I understand it? And I don't know, did you talk about the guns yet before, the Brooke rifles that are here?
Just very briefly, she had 2 6.4-inch guns. They could fire close to 100-pound shells, about a 95-pound Brooke bolt shell, a distance of almost 3 miles. It's about 2.5-mile distance.
And what I just can't believe is that a big ship like this, large ship like this, has only 2 guns, but it could go to one of any number of different places in order to shoot. Let's show you here so you can see the tracks. Watch your step, Chris White. So right now it's pointing out the center, but it can also, using these tracks that Chris is showing right here, shoot out of this gun well or shoot out of this one here. In other words, and the one on the back could get together so they could deliver a broadside. Did I get that about right, man?
Yeah, you could have shot out the side or the broadside, you could have shot out the quarter panel, or you could shoot out the bow or the stern.
Oh man, and now we've got someone from Stockholm watching, so eat that, eat your heart out, UK. You are now in the lead, Stockholm. Somebody has to try to beat that. We've got Maine.
The Vasa in Stockholm is to be seen too.
All right,
that's an amazing ship.
Well, we'll see if the person agrees. I bet you they do. I see Central Virginia, and we are seeing on here. Do you know anything about where the Brooke rifles were built?
We don't, unfortunately, and we don't know what happened to them. The ship sank in 1865. She was recovered by the firm of Satterley and Lyon out of New York. She won the Satterley and Lyon won the salvage contract and was told, you can keep and sell off everything except the cannons. The cannons are to be retained by the government. So the U.S. Navy kept the guns, but we have no idea what happened to them because they weren't recorded what numbers they were when they went in. I have a friend of mine who works at the D.C. Navy Yard who says he may have a 6.4-inch off the Neuse, but he's not sure. It's one of the great mysteries of the CSS Neuse. Where are her guns now?
Good, good. So great question, Shannon. She was curious if they were built at Tredegar, and I'll give that. I don't know if they built Brooks there, but I'll give it a good chance.
We do know that most of her iron plating probably came from Atlanta and not Tredegar.
Good, good. So Chris is obviously showing up toward, the pilot house. And Chris, did you show those little areas? What did you say about that earlier, Matt?
So these 4 slots that are up above the pilot house, there's one forward, one on each side, and one to the stern. That was the only way you could see to steer the ship. I tell people it's like driving an 18-wheeler backwards down the interstate, only using your mirrors.
I liked it just as much the second time. That's a good analogy there.
And it's much heavier than an 18-wheeler.
Okay, good.
She was probably 225 or 230 tons when she was in the water originally.
Wow. So we have a lot to show you, but we're still on the artillery front. So let's pivot over here and see what we have to see. I think you all are aware that rifled guns could fire a variety of ordnance. It exploded, it didn't explode, it scattered. What do we have?
We have all 4 different types of original ordnance that this cannon fired. First, we have the solid Brook rifle bolts. These are about 95-pound projectiles. They could go about 2.5 miles. Then you have the Brook rifle shell and the Mullane shells. We've sliced one in half so you can get an idea for how it would have looked. The gunpowder would have been packed inside, and on top would have been one of these, which is a contact percussion fuse. When it made contact, sends a spark down, ignites the powder, shell explodes. Then up here we have our stand of Brook grape shot. So that's a very standard naval type shot, large round balls that were meant to disable enemy sails, rigging, smokestacks. And then you have your anti-personnel over here, the canister shot. And you can see we took the canister directly out of this can here, and you'll see that it not only has the round balls, but it has nuts and bolts and bits of other metal and shrapnel. It was designed to create mass casualties, mass bits of shrapnel wiping the enemy deck.
Good, good. Check it out. So somebody was asking about the draft of the Neuse. Did you already address that?
About 8 feet. She had a draft of about 8 feet.
8 feet. You heard it here. Let's keep moving on here. And I thought this interactive is really cool. Could you explain this a little bit,
Sure.
Matt? I'll go hard over.
So this is our sailing interactive, our steering interactive. It's all connected together. The ship's wheel is all connected all the way back to the ship's rudder.
So people can actually see that it's working, and it's really cool. It lets you know really how slow this rudder is really moving.
And the ship would have been moving very slowly too. Her top speed would have only been 3 to 4 knots, and that may be going with the current.
Okay, good, good. Now, sometimes I get a little bit excited. Maybe I was turning that thing a little bit faster. For once, not talking loud enough, believe it or not. But, I'd like to hear from you all. We've got a couple of people that just wished I would calm down, or maybe we would have less energy.
No.
I want to hear you vote. If you'd like less energy and a whole lot less jumping around, I'd like to hear from you, because we've got a couple of people that just want me to calm down, and I'm sorry, I can't.
Does the cameraman get a vote?
The cameraman votes frequently when we ride hours in the car together. You're with the American Battlefield Trust, and we're at the CSS Neuse Civil War Interpretive Center with the site director, Matt Young, and we are loving it. It looks like Chris wants to take a shot at the wheel there. It just has to be right in the middle for him. Aesthetically pleasing. Indeed, good. All right, what else do we have?
All right, so the ship was crewed by professional officers. These are mostly men that had gone to Annapolis. They had prior experience as officers in the Navy, and they were the ones who were in charge of the ship. However, most of their crew, not all of it, but most of their crew were amateurs. They were soldiers, they were farmers, they were men who had no experience or little to no experience on board ironclads. We found a record recently where the commander of the Albemarle is telling the quartermasters in Kinston and in where the Albemarle was to contact the North Carolina depot and get clothing from the North Carolina depot for the men. So we know that it was a mixture of Army and Navy stuff that these guys were actually wearing.
Good, good. Let's check more of it out. So I think the answer is yes. You have things from the people that were actually on this ship, and some of it's identified, I think.
It is. One of the questions we often get is, well, where did they sleep, or what did they sleep in? We have records of bunk beds, but we also have found hooks and hammock rings on board, so we know that they also slept in hammocks.
Very cool. And I like what you showed us on the end here.
Yes. We have the original ship's stove, and it's a naval stove because it's got this piping around the top to prevent pots and pans from sliding off when the ship is in waves. Now, of course, the Neuse never got out of the Neuse River, so it never got into the Sounds or the ocean. So big waves weren't really a problem, but this was a naval stove that was on board.
All right, cool.
Now, one of my favorite artifacts, can I ask you about that?
Tell them.
I'm going to ask Garry about this. The first time we went through, I said, take a look at that glass bottle at the very top and see if you can tell me, without looking at the label, what is on the bottle.
I think that Chris has given you a good enough shot. You should be able to get it. We'll give you a sec. Let's see if anybody can actually get it into the comments. While we're waiting, I did hear somebody say maybe drink decaf. But 2 other people say love the energy, so thank you for the support. All right, so what's the bottle there?
So the bottle, if you couldn't make it out, is a Lee and Perrins Worcestershire sauce bottle. I think I said that right.
Worcestershire.
Let's ask the folks in the UK. Are we
Worcestershire.
Worcestershire? Worcestershire sauce. So they are flavoring their food with the exact same brand of Worcestershire sauce that we still flavor our food with today.
And a little known fact, Worcestershire has anchovies in it.
Yes.
All right.
The original recipe did.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. All right, what do we have to see next? I know we have some recovery stuff coming up, and you have something really cool to show.
Before we get to the recovery, I want to show you one of the hidden gems here at the CSS Neuse. That hidden gem is located in the stern, and I don't know.
Wait till you see this.
Chris, if you can get this right here. What you see is the back of a .58 caliber mini ball. This is from when the ship was attacked as it was being constructed at Whitehall, North Carolina. So that is the back of a .58 caliber mini ball.
And you know, there's a slight delay on these live videos, so let it be shown that at least 4 people got the Leah and Perrins correct.
Oh, nice.
My compliments to Roger, Tom, Michael, Jay, Tom, and Eric. Even though 2 only said Worcestershire, we're going to go ahead and give you that.
Close enough.
What a cool view Chris is showing there.
And finally, we talk about the recovery of the ship. It was always kind of known where she was, but in the 1960s, with the centennial of the war, people were asking the question, what did Kinston do? What did they contribute to the Civil War? And everybody was like, oh, we built an ironclad. Some people said it was 100 feet long. Some people said it was 250 feet long. The reality was it was somewhere in between. And everybody kind of knew where it was because at low river levels, they would fish off it. The kids would dive off of it. And when it was recovered, they found it largely intact. Unfortunately for us, they destroyed about half the ship bringing it up because it was seen as more of an economic opportunity than an actual historical or archaeological recovery.
Okay, well, what pictures do you want to show us just to give people the flavor here?
So you can see it was outside until 2012, and here in 2012, we moved the ironclad about 3 road miles from its former location underneath a big shelter to this building. And then we built the wall to block us off from the street.
So it came right in here. You set it down on the concrete.
Set it down on the concrete pad. Absolutely.
All right, good,
now,
good.
one of the most exciting things about this ironclad is the views that you can get from up above.
All right,
this is the only place in the world that you can stand gun deck level on a Confederate ironclad, and we're about to do it.
All right, well, let's make a walk over there. Really cool. We'll let Chris go in front so we don't have our posteriors live on camera.
Again, I'll say, to learn more about our place, go to facebook.com, CSS Neuse, Neuse. So Gary, here we are, gun deck level on a Confederate ironclad.
And I think what I want to just say is while Chris is showing this, to thank the North Carolina Department of Historic Resources and Matt Young for having us today. Matt, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
This is super cool. We hope you can come here. Check them out on their Facebook page, CSS Neuse. We hope you can come visit, and thank you for supporting battlefield preservation and for keeping up with all of our videos. Make sure you share them with your friends. I'll leave you with a moment of Zen and the ship.